At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Sarah Wilson for us to begin.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of Uptown United and Uptown Chamber of Commerce. And thrilled to have so many of you rolling in this morning to learn some strategies and tips for getting your business off the ground. Before I begin, in the chat, I would love to see how many folks have either started a business, are thinking about starting a business, or thinking about expanding their business. If you could just kind of drop that in the chat, I just want to kind of gauge who all we have in the audience. So as you do that, I would love to tell you a little bit more about our organization. So Uptown United is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on the north side of the city. We focus on economic development strategies, smart urban planning policies, infrastructure investment, as well as serving as one of the SSA providers here in the city. We are actually the largest SSA with 15 miles of sidewalk space. So we do everything from providing facade improvement rebate programs to graffiti removal to free public events. But our partner in all of this is the Uptown Chamber of Commerce, who just celebrated 100 years of consecutive service on Sunday. We're one of the oldest chambers of commerce, providing direct business support services to our membership, all in an effort to build a strong, unified business environment, facilitate economic development, strengthen community, and really celebrate and nurture a diverse, vibrant, and strong Uptown. Great. Let's see. I have some people in the Q&A. I've got entertainment. Oh, I see that the chat's disabled. That's okay. Please go ahead, drop it in the Q&A. Early stages of the business and just starting business. Great. So as you think of things, please feel free to kind of drop them in the Q&A as we go along in this presentation, and I'll do my best to answer them as they kind of pop up, but hope to plan for enough Q&A time at the conclusion of this presentation. So let's get started. You're all here today because you're entrepreneurial in spirit, and you're either thinking about starting a business, or you're in the midst of already starting a business, or you're thinking about expanding a business and just want to know more. So here's what we're going to run down today. We're going to talk about getting feedback on your business, the importance of writing it down, also how imperative it is that you build your team. We'll also walk through what it means to get established, also the value in the phrase, don't sign anything yet. And one of the hardest parts of being a business owner is being patient. So with that, here we go. Oh, thank you, BACP. You could go ahead and put your questions in the chat box that has now been activated. So with that, let's get started on what it means to get feedback. So many of you may be in the ideation stage. You have either come out of the pandemic, during the pandemic, realize, hey, I have this great idea. I want to make it into something. Or you have a hobby and you're wanting to make it from a side hustle into a full-fledged business. Or you're just curious. One of the most important things to do is bounce your ideas off of folks. Talk to family and friends, to peers. Get a sense of, what do you think about this business idea? Is this completely out there? Do you think that there's a potential market for it? Market meaning that there are consumers who would either buy your product or buy your service. Really be open and honest about what it is that you're thinking of, because they're going to be some of your best feedback initially. And then the next important thing to do is visit or research other competitors. Everybody wants to have the next great idea, but the reality is that many of our great ideas are evolutions or in response to some problem or need. If you're looking into expanding or building a business that has an active storefront, maybe go research existing competitors, get a sense of what their store layout is, what their pricing model is, what their customer service is, just so that you get a sense of what your market competition is. It's highly recommended that you also do this for your services as well. We've really seen since the pandemic, this rise in entrepreneurship, this rise in entrepreneurship, and those that are doing contract work mostly online. really try to do some research on who you are directly competing with. What type of service do they offer? How would you differ from their type of service offerings? Is your geography different? Really try and write all of these different things down, like on just scrap paper. But you really want to do your research, because if you go into building a business model without having done any direct research, you're going to be running into direct competition, which is going to eat your market demand, and who your customer base could be, and could really inhibit your ability to grow as a business. So it's imperative, before you start really getting into any solid business planning effort or business licensing, that you really have a good sense of who is your competitor, because you want to make sure you can differentiate yourself. It's all about being able to differentiate yourself. Another idea is not only doing the research, but contact your local Chicago business center or your neighborhood chamber of commerce. That's why we're here. As a chamber of commerce, we're a membership-based organization. So we often have directories of all of our paid membership. And it's a great opportunity just to pop into our office and say, hi, I'm thinking about doing notary services, or I'm thinking of providing social media one-on-one to small business entrepreneurs. Do you have any chamber members that do this service? Or do you think that there is a need for your chambers to have someone else in the neighborhood that provides this service? We're great resources because we're on the ground and we see the changes in our business community on a day-to-day basis. So do not hesitate to identify your local chamber of commerce or your local economic development organization and come talk to us. We're going to be one of your most frequent points of contact, I hope, and one of the most valuable pieces of information. So you're in ideation phase. You're starting to get ideas and you're talking about it with families, with friends, you're doing your research. The next thing that you're going to want to do is write it down. There is real power in the physiological connection between your brain and physically writing something down. Many of us are visual learners. Writing down what you envision your exact business plan to be and what your goals are for this business will help you narrow it down. It's really important as you're developing your business that you have a very specific goal, service, or product in mind. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs have really fantastic ideas that encompass a number of either different product lines or service offerings, but the reality is you're only one person. Really focus in on what it is that you're good at and what you can consistently replicate or produce so that you can develop brand identification. One of the best resources that we here at Uptown United and the Chamber rely upon for business planning resources is SCORE. They offer free business plan templates for startup businesses as well as established businesses. All of this information is available on the City of Chicago BACP website, right here, SCORE Chicago. And if you just go to their website, you can download a template that you can fill things in. Keep an active business plan in place and make sure you're updating it regularly based off of the feedback that you're getting. Take a step back, write it down, step away from it from a little bit, think about it. Does this make sense? Do I feel like I'm overstretched? Also do this with your financial planning and budgeting. One of the things that we run into pretty regularly here at Uptown United and the Chamber of Commerce is, I'm ready to hit the ground running. Well, have you done your financial modeling? What do you project your revenue stream to be over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What are your projected expenses? Do you have a sense of what your general price point should be for either your service offering or your product or your good? It is imperative that you write everything down. One of the real values of going through this template is that you can continue to refine it, and your business should evolve as you learn what works, what doesn't work. So having some sort of business plan template will set you up with a strong foundation as you move forward in discussions with either startup incubators, or you're going through entrepreneurial certificate programs like offered at BACP, it gives you more structure. The more structure that you have, the greater success you're setting yourself up for when it comes to operating and starting your own business. And I can't stress it enough, do this also with your financial plan and your budget. One of the things we stress almost daily whenever we get a consultation in, either through Uptown United, our Uptown Business Center, which is one of 8 Chicago business centers here in the city, or even just our Chamber of Commerce, is who's on your team? For those of you in the chat, have you thought about, or listening, have you thought about who's on your team? Is it just you? Are you relying on family and friends for specific guidance? Are they specialized in areas of expertise? It is imperative that you build a team around you of experts. Now, you may think, well, I don't necessarily need these right away. And that may be true, but it is really important that you start making connections with a small business attorney, an accountant, or a bookkeeper before you even start getting into any sort of contracts, financial conversations with institutions. These are organizations or individuals or experts who know the ins and outs of what it means to be a small business owner. They can help guide you through contract negotiations. They can help guide you on what type of entity should you be established at. Should you be a LLC? Should you be an S Corp? All of these questions, which when you start getting into the nitty gritty of it, could be very over one's head because it's very legalese. Rely upon someone who really focuses on small business to be an advocate on your team. We often stress that you should also have a CPA and a bookkeeper, because once you start getting established, it is time consuming on a month-to-month, week-to-week, day-to-day basis to making sure that your QuickBooks are up to date with all of your income and your expenses coming in, that they're properly categorized so that you can really see how money is flowing in and out of your business. That way you can make the necessary adjustments. These are 2 key items that you should really budget for when you do your financial planning. It seems like an unnecessary expense, but in the long term, building in an expense to have either frequent or yearly contract reviews with a small business attorney on either a retainer basis or an hourly basis, or the same with a CPA, is going to prove to save you money in the end, because they can help spot potential costly mistakes before that. We often get people coming to us when they're in crisis mode. One of my colleagues on the team, Kylie Rushinsky, she's our director of the Uptown Business Center, hears this fairly regularly. I've signed this contract, or I am about to sign this whatever contract it is, and I think I'm stuck. Well, do you have an attorney on your team? No, we don't provide legal advice, so you should make sure you budget in for a small business attorney, because they can help you remedy whatever the situation is and then forecast and prepare for what may come down the pipeline. All of this is leading up to building relationships with a banker and a financial institution. Your neighborhood banks are one of the most reliable places that you can go to for guidance. We often rely upon institutions here on the north side, such as Wintrust Bank, Byline Bank, Great Lakes Credit Union, Huntington Bank, for one-on-one banking support whenever an entrepreneur comes in and says, hi, I think I'm ready to move into a storefront and I'm going to need a commercial loan. These bankers know the ins and outs of working with small businesses and can provide you real targeted guidance on what your business needs in terms of potential capital streams, reserves, etc. Pop in, if you haven't already, as you're building out your business plan. Talk to your neighborhood bankers. Start building a relationship with them, because they're the ones that are really going to provide you with real-time guidance on what interest rates are. This is the type of savings account you should have, or you should have this checking account, or you should have X percentage of money in reserves as backup on a month-to-month basis. Build that relationship now. The other institution that we strongly recommend any entrepreneur, as you're starting to get your business plan up and running, to build into their team is an insurance broker. You need to have insurance. It could either be personal insurance or business insurance to cover whatever services or goods that you're offering. If you are about to expand from a sole proprietorship to having employees, making sure that your insurance coverage covers those whom you're going to be hiring. It is imperative to make sure that you are protected. Get an insurance broker. Oftentimes it could be very overwhelming between all the different agencies that you may see advertising for. Pop into your neighborhood chamber of commerce and see who do you have in the neighborhood that is a constant and consistent member that provides real quality service to your entrepreneurs and your home-based businesses or your burgeoning storefronts. They will give you the best rates, they will give you the best guidance. And again, this is all about protection. And while it may seem like a costly expense up front, again, this is another item that you build into your financial plan as you're looking at year one expenses and revenues, year two in revenues and expenses, year three. This should be a line item as with your attorney fees and bookkeepers that are constant. You should have these and they're there as protection. It's like homeowners insurance or renters insurance. It's one of those necessary expenses that you don't really know you need it until you actually need it. So budget for it and get established with your local insurance agency. Again, have someone that can help you with small business planning and utilize local resources like your chamber of commerce, your alderperson, your block clubs. These are individuals or organizations who may have a good sense of helping you connect to that small business attorney or to that CPA that could potentially provide referrals. Getting a one-on-one referral for a service provider to help build out your team is someone that is trusted and reliable and invaluable to you as a small business owner and can really help you avoid landmines as you're going through the process. So can't emphasize it enough. Build your team and budget for building your team. It will save you in the long run. We joke in our office by saying we kind of want to purchase a billboard to not only promote organization, but the Uptown Business Center. And it just says, don't sign a lease. We often have entrepreneurs come in who are so excited. I've got this great business idea. I want to be out on the street so people can see me and I have the presence of pedestrian and vehicular or transit activity. I've talked to the broker. I'm ready to sign the lease. And we say, hold on a second. Have you read the terms of the lease? Do you have that small business attorney or a commercial broker reading the terms of a commercial lease? If you haven't experienced commercial real estate negotiation or contract negotiation, this goes back to my point on the previous slide. Get yourself a small business lawyer, attorney, or a commercial broker who could help break down the legalese of these contracts and explain it in such a way that you know what you were signing and what you will be responsible for and what your landlord or whomever you're entering into a contract will be responsible for. We had one business owner who did not have a small business attorney and is in a contract dispute now with a contractor after changing to a different contract provider. And there's a dispute about being in breach of contract. It is imperative that you do not sign anything that makes you legally obligated to the terms of that contract without having someone reading thoroughly what is written in that contract. Commercial leases in particular do not tend to be 1 year, 2 year. They tend to be 3 year, 5 years. Some may even be longer than that. And hidden within those contracts are roles and responsibilities for the landlord and the tenant and what you as a tenant are actually responsible for or liable for. So before you do anything, please, I cannot stress this enough. Before I go out and buy a billboard, please don't sign anything. Get yourself a small business attorney to review any sort of contract. That could be commercial lease. It could be your loan contract. It could be any contract with another service provider, or you want to 1099 someone, meaning you want to do you want to hire a contract worker on your behalf. Have someone read the terms or help draft the terms of that contract to ensure that you are protected. This is all about the long game. And while we want to move fast and making sure that you get yourself up and running, moving too fast and signing things without having extra sets of eyes from someone who is an expert in the field could be very costly for you in the long run. So it's better that you take a breath, you slow down, you get that small business attorney to review the contracts before you sign or issue anything. One of the things that is coming up more regularly that you should be aware of that is a bit of an unknown. It is very, very confusing if you're not in the know. It is zoning. Who here, if you're in the chat, the Q&A, who knows what zoning is and what the zoning code is? Anyone? I tend to know it really well because my background's in urban planning and I studied the zoning code, so I understand it. But how a business and zoning interact with each other is actually a very confusing process, but it is of utmost importance that you know what the zoning is, because what zoning is that it is a set of rules that dictate what type of uses are allowed to be next to each other throughout the city. So for example, you can have residential zoning next to commercial zoning because you want to have residents support the commercial zoning or the commercial businesses near their residents. Whereas in very dense areas, and this is a hot topic area of what is industrial zoning or manufacturing zoning in relationship to residential zoning or commercial zoning. The zoning code spells out by law what is permitted within various areas of the city. What's important for you as a business owner is that the zoning code breaks down different types of uses, meaning types of businesses that are permitted within each type of zoning classification. If you're not familiar with it, your eyes can glaze over. You can say, oh my gosh, I don't understand this. This is exactly why the Chicago Business Centers exist, to help break down the nuance of what is actually permitted within each zoning classification. We've had a couple businesses come into the Uptown Business Center saying, I'm ready to sign a lease at this particular location. And we say, hey, wait a second, have you checked the zoning? Are you allowed to be there? Well, no, I haven't done that. Well, BACP has what's called a business zoning guide, which you can find on their website, that breaks down all the different types of zoning classifications and what are the uses that are in there. So for example, ground floor, there's ground floor commercial, and then within ground floor commercial, you can have a retail store, you can have a coffee shop, but you can't have manufacturing. Are you doing large like catering? Are you a baker and you need industrial sized kitchen space? Well, that's not likely permitted on a commercial corridor. So maybe hold off on signing a lease over there. So it's a really, really, really imperative that before you go down the process of signing any sort of lease, that you check out with either Chicago Business Center, or you go down to the city, which I'll get to in a couple minutes, to ensure that your proposed business is permitted within the zoning that you are seeking. There's so much nuance to it that it's hard, sometimes even for myself, to figure out what is permitted where. And it's also because some things can be changed within the zoning. You can ask the alderman, like, hey, this is actually not that noxious of a use. I'm actually doing this. Can I get what's called a special use permit? And that's a whole other can of worms to get into, but not for today. But it all comes down to the zoning. So before you start embarking on one particular location, really explore what the zoning is and what your use is, and is it permitted within that zoning? Come to a Chicago Business Center. The Small Business Center down at BACP can help you specifically look at what your proposed use is and make sure that it's not in conflict with where the zoning is. And I see a couple of you in the Q&A that knows what zoning is, and fantastic. It's one of those things that's kind of changing. It's old. It can be really hard. It needs to be a comprehensive change for the city to update its zoning, but there are some small changes that occur based on business uses. That's why it's really, really important as you narrow down what your particular use is. You talk to someone at a Chicago Business Center, like Uptown Business Center, or you go downtown and you talk to someone who can get you the clarity on zoning. Because once you embark on that path, for example, you've already signed that lease, but you haven't checked out what the zoning is, and then you find out that your business is not permitted where you've just signed your lease, you're kind of on the hook, right? So it's really important that while you want to run, you stop and you do your due diligence, because it's going to save you money in the long run. This is an example of the city's zoning map. You can go online and we can get it dropped into it. You can find it on BACP's website. Up here in the corner, let me see if I can get our remote control. Up in the corner, you can see, let me go back one field. You can see a field where you can enter an address. So as you're exploring, you can type in an address. This is my office address for Uptown United and Uptown Chamber of Commerce, 4619 North Broadway. You can put in the address, any place in the city, and what it will do is it'll pop up on the website and show you what the zoning district is. Then you can write that down. And then you can go to the business zoning guide that BACP has. If you're ambitious and want to do this by yourself, you click on that, you see it's B3-2, which means that within this particular category, there are very specific uses along this commercial corridor within this zoning. So this is something that you can do as you're exploring potential locations. You could do this in a one-on-one session with someone at the Small Business Center downtown. You could do this with anyone at our Chicago business centers. If your Chamber of Commerce is equipped on the zoning end of things, they could help you too. But it is imperative that you learn what that zoning district is, so that you know that you are legally allowed to operate your business. So to recap, you've jotted, you have your ideas, you've been getting feedback from family, friends, maybe you've been doing your research with competitors. You've decided, I think I kind of know what it is I want to do. I'm going to write it down. So you started your business plan. You've started your financial planning and your budget, and it's all kind of coming together. You can see the pieces of what a business could look like starting to form into a structure. But you've also built your team. So you have other people there to help you. And you've also checked the zoning of where you want to operate your business. And you now know, yes, I can operate in this particular location. You have to get established. But what does it mean to get established? Well, this is where it is important to have a CPA and a small business attorney help you determine what type of business legal entity you have. That is really important, particularly for tax purposes, and what type of corporation, sole proprietorship, LLC you want to become. Each of them have their own tax benefits and cons. We do not provide financial guidance. That is why it's imperative that you have someone on your team who can help guide you to ensure that you are maximizing this type of legal entity to your benefit. So once you get yourself established legally, you need to register with the state of Illinois. This is important for state of Illinois tax purposes. as well as getting your EIN, which is also your federal tax identification number. That's where your federal taxes kind of come in. All of this is leading up to making sure you're properly paying all of your taxes, as well as it's important to be established when you go to apply for a Chicago business license, which I'll get to in a second. This is where coming into a Chicago Business Center, your small business attorney or CPA can really help you guide you through that process of what is the best fit for you. And all of this is really important because when you start applying for a Chicago business license, you can't really make changes. So it's important that you know exactly what type of business that you want to be legally, that you have your tax ID numbers, both the state and with the federal government, because all of that information is going to be required when you start filling out your Chicago business license. But why do you need a business license? Well, the city requires a Chicago business license for anyone wishing to conduct, engage in, maintain, or operate any type of business. There's a caveat though. There are some licenses that are uses or businesses that are not required to have a City of Chicago license because they are regulated through the state of Illinois. So for example, doctor's offices, your cosmetologist, physical therapists, things of that nature. It's really important that you talk to BACP to help determine what type of licensure you need. Do you need both the state and the city, or are you covered just by the state of Illinois? It really just depends on what your proposed business is, but it's important that you get clarity before you start filling out any paperwork with the City of Chicago for a business license. I see some questions kind of popping up in the chat, and I will get to those, particularly around zoning in the Q&A. So what are the steps for applying for a Chicago business license? Well, since we are now moving out of a pandemic, I believe today we're officially out of a pandemic, state of emergency mode. There's a multitude of ways you can do it. You can apply online through Chicago Business Direct. Although there's caveats that there are certain businesses licenses that you cannot apply for online, and you do have to go downtown, such as a pop-up retail user license, or are you a home-based business? That's another one where you can't apply online. Or you can just go downtown, and sometimes it's faster to go downtown, and I'll get to that in a second. One of the things you need to keep in mind, though, is that once you start the application process, it could take about 3 to 5 weeks to process your application. So don't sign anything again or until you have your business license approval. Sometimes within your lease negotiations, if you're looking to operate in a storefront or some type of commercial space, you could put in your lease that it's contingent upon receiving your business license. That way it's a backup to you so that you're not stuck paying monthly rent on a space where you legally can't be there or you just don't have your business license. You should also factor in the cost. This varies depending on the type of license that you require, but most are generally good for about 2 years and cost between $225 to $275. But I encourage you to take a look at BACP's website to see if there's been any recent changes in that cost figure. The renewal period, you can either do online or in person, but again, this is one of those costs that it's a biannual cost that you should budget for when you are doing your either monthly or your yearly your business budget. I see a question. Do e-commerce or online services need licenses in Chicago? Do you need a business license in Illinois for online businesses? We will get into online's a little bit trickier because there's also online retail sales tax. So we'll get to some of these questions about why there's also a need with Cook County. We'll get to those in a little bit. Before you even go online to start filling out a business license, you're going to have to fill out what's called a business information sheet. Here's a screenshot for you of what that looks like. It's available on BACP's website. Any entity that is looking to get a City of Chicago business license must fill out this form. And it is going to ask you for many of those things that we talked about in the getting established slide. It's going to ask you for your for your employer identification number, your tax ID number. What type of business are you? Are you a sole proprietor? Are you an LLC? Are you going to have a different doing business as name than what your legal name, like your legal business name is? It's a very common practice as well. Where someone may register as Sarah Wilson Consulting LLC, but then my doing business name is Sunshine something. That's a very common practice, but it's important to know what all that is and to be able to clearly articulate what is your business activity. Are you narrowing down? Have you narrowed down where you're going to be doing your business? That gets back to the question of, are you legally allowed to do your business within the zoning that you are looking for? You have to have an address for your business license. So having all this information filled out, knowing it in advance, not only is beneficial for processing time, but is beneficial because it will ensure that you are in compliance and that you don't have to make any changes. As soon as something on this changes, for example, your site address changes, your activity changes, you have to start over again, because once the license is issued, the license is issued. There's no real opportunity, at least as of late, to go back and make changes prior to either the license being issued or it being issued and revising it. So this is what you will need, whether you either fill it out online for your license or you go downtown. You decide you want to do it online. You don't have time to go downtown because city is only operated. The city is only open from like 8:30 to 4:30. You just can't get there, right? Because maybe this is your side hustle and you're going to create something new. You can do it all online, and this is exactly what it looks like. You go to chicagobusinessdirect.org, and it's a pretty friendly user experience to walk through. This is what it'll look like when you go in. And what you need to do is fill out or click on the tab New Business Location Application. And that's where you're going to start filling out your application for a new business license. Once you get established, you're going to get a user account ID, email password, etc. And then this is the portal that you will go on to do renewals and things of that nature. So it's important to get familiarized with yourself if you don't want to go downtown. So you filled out everything. The city has taken about 3 to 5 weeks to process. You get your city license. This is what it looks like. You have to have it displayed within your business. It needs to be on display in some way, shape, or form. Whether if you're a retail establishment and you have it behind the counter, that's a fairly common practice. You have it behind your desk. If you're a consultant or you're whatever your service is, you need to have it visible, because there's always a chance that an inspector can come in and is looking for your business license. This is what it looks like. Make sure you have it on display. The last thing is probably one of the hardest things, and it's to be patient. You're excited, you're ready to hit the ground running. You feel like you've got this momentum, you're building your team, you have your business plan ready to go, you're ready to start putting together your license application, lease negotiations, all the things. And you want to open your business by a certain date. Well, I hate to tell you right now, things are moving a lot slower for a variety of reasons. We're still kind of coming out of pandemic, process delays. There's also a change in administration. There's a change in staffing. So things are just backlogged. And that's true across the board for not just business licenses, but building permits, food, kitchen inspections, all of those things are just taking significantly longer. And that can be incredibly frustrating when you are just so eager, ambitious, ready to go, and you want to make sure you capitalize on your momentum and you open by a certain date. You've got to give yourself some extra time because things are not going to move as fast as you want them to or what you think that they might go. You should also budget in extra costs associated with any type of delay. So for example, you're ready to go, you're getting established as a business, you've got your business license, and let's just say you've identified that location you're in, but you need to do a little bit of work on the inside of your commercial space. Well, you likely need a building permit for that. And building permits are just taking a really long time right now to get processed because there's just only so many inspectors. And there's just been a huge influx of people ready and eager to do this type of work. You're going to have to budget into your in your financial plan that you might be paying some extra months of rent while you're waiting for construction to get up and started, or maybe that becomes a point of your lease negotiations if you're at that point. But you really need to make sure that you have fully accounted for any extra expenses you may occur while you're waiting for either your building permit to get approved, your occupancy permit to be approved, like if you're a restaurant or things of that nature. Plan for longer. And it can be incredibly frustrating. It is one of the things that we encounter quite regularly with businesses that come in for us seeking guidance of, I've been waiting for so long on my permits and I wanted to open 6 weeks ago, but I'm now behind. Can you help? What do I do? Like I already said we were going to open. Take a deep breath. Your Chicago Business Centers, BACP are here to help you, but plan for things to take longer than you think that they're going to take. And it'll be frustrating, but know your team that you've built around you is there to help you throughout the process. And hopefully your team has helped equip you with an extra cushion within your budget, within your negotiations, whatever it may be, to ensure that you are meeting whatever timeline you're meeting in a fiscally responsible way. So with that, I want to just direct some references, and BACP, maybe you can chime in. I think this deck might become available to those that are participating. Otherwise, if not, when this goes on YouTube, you can just Google Chicago Business Direct or license type or any of the information I provided in here. You could Google it and it'll come right up. You could schedule an appointment with our director of the Uptown Business Center through Calendly if you have a very specific type of question. All of this is readily available. And one of the things I really want to point out too is that as a Chicago Business Center, we are here to provide extra support to BACP and to our entrepreneurs in the neighborhood. And there are 8 of us across the city, generally following some of the planning district boundaries. So for example, Uptown United, as the business center, we service the entire north side. So if you are located north of Division, anywhere between Division and Howard and anything east of the river, we're here to provide you with free support. There is no strings attached. You can literally come to us, schedule time, or pop in to any of us and answering your questions, guiding you through the process, triaging whatever crisis you may be encountering, or preparing you for that trip to BACP is all free of charge. And here are our counterparts across the city. We have Allies for Community Business. We have Austin African American Business Network Association. On our far south side, we have Calumet Area Industrial Commission. On our far southwest side, Greater Southwest Development Corporation. Our counterparts on the northwest side are the North River Commission. We also have the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, and in like the South Loop, Bronzeville, Hyde Park area, you can reach out to QCDC, the Quad Communities Development Corporation, and then there's us, Uptown United, here on the north side. Our services are entirely free. We are funded by a grant from BACP to provide extra support through business licensing, sign permits. I didn't even get into sign permits, and that's a whole other ball game. But we're here to help you every step of the way and get you ready so that when you go downtown to fill out your business licenses, boom, you are ready to go, and we can be there to help triage and support in any sort of way at no cost to you whatsoever. And I think that's one of the huge value adds of being able to support our chambers of commerce and other economic development organizations across the city who may not have full staff capacity. We are here to help you. All this information will be available. It's also available. Our contact information is on BACP's website. If you Google Chicago Business Centers, if you're not on the north side, there is someone close to you that you could go to for very specific answers. Or Kylie from our team is actually on the call right now. And if you want to drop your info in the chat, she'll grab your information, and we can make sure we connect you with the organization who is closest to wherever you're looking to either locate or where you're already established. So with that, I want to dive into the questions and into the chat. I'm first going to go into the Q&A. So let's see. Trust. Will I be discussing trust? No. As you can see, I did not discuss trust. That's a whole other legal entity that I am not skilled to provide any sort of guidance on a trust. I highly recommend that you talk to a small business attorney about trusts. That is well beyond our scope of services and has legal implications. So it's best you get yourself an attorney. Let's see. Here's a question. Does zoning apply to office spaces or just buildings for business? Zoning is blanket determination for every single building of what is permitted where, and then what can be housed within those buildings. So that is why it's really important for you to understand, because there's different variations within the zoning. There's residential zoning. There's 2 different types of commercial zoning. There's different types of manufacturing zoning and industrial zoning. And within each different classification of zoning, well, it's really important that you know what the exact zoning district is so that you can see what types of uses are permitted there. Zoning gets very complicated, very fast. And it's one of those things where it's best if you come talk to someone at a Chicago Business Center, or you go downtown when you're ready, if you have the time to go downtown and talk to someone in the small business center, a specialist who can actually look at the exact zoning for you right then and there and tell you, yes, this is permitted, no, this is not permitted. What types of licenses are required for e-commerce? I'm seeing some e-commerce questions as well. And e-commerce is one of those evolving business structures with licenses, along with home-based businesses. This is one where I strongly suggest, depending on what your e-commerce business is, that you talk to the small business center downtown, because they can help guide you if you're like a distributor online, if you are manufacturing items yourself and then you're selling things online through e-commerce, that adds a layer of complexity. So if you're doing any type of online sales, I highly, highly recommend that you talk to someone at BACP in the Small Business Center to get exact clarity on what type of licensing you need, because it also, it's important because if you're selling things online, paying state retail sales tax and all of those types of implications are associated with e-commerce. So I can't give you a specific type of license. It depends on what your use is, your particular services online, and highly recommend that you talk to small business attorney, CPA to help with the particular taxing structure that's required if you're selling things online, and then a small business center specialist. Question about a zoning license for a group home. Lois, this is one that maybe you should reach out to us more specifically, because group homes fall under a couple of different categories with medical providers and residential. So this is getting a little bit nuanced. So if you want to go ahead and I'll ask Kylie from my team to drop her email in the chat, but you can reach out to us at UBC. So that's ubc@exploreuptown.org. Send us an email and we will help work through that question for you on that one, because group homes are a little bit more complicated. Let's go over to the chat. All right, lots of great stuff kind of coming in here. My business is in a heavy regulated industry, so alcoholic production. Should I look for an attorney specifically for licensing on top of a small business attorney, or one which should be sufficient? Start with one and see what they have to say. There are often a number of firms that will do a free 1-hour consultation. For example, we here in Uptown have a fantastic partner called G&G Law, where they will offer an initial business consultation for free to help determine whether or not their services fall within their scope, what you're requiring fall within their scope of services, or if it's going to be required of something more nuanced. For example, as you're saying, Phil, of the different type of industry you're in, highly recommend, depending on where you're located, talk to your Chamber of Commerce, talk to a Chicago Business Center, find out if there's a referral for a free consultation so that you can find the right attorney who is the best fit for you, especially if you're in a more regulated industry. Some know the nuance, if there is a particular nuance, and some don't. So highly recommend that you reach out to someone for a free consultation so that you can get guidance. Let's see. Monique, thank you. I think you've got your answers questions. Bruno, if I am starting a service provider business from my basement, does zoning come into play? Zoning always comes into play, regardless of which floor of a building you are working in. So depending on what your service is that you are seeking to operate out of your basement, it is imperative that you check the zoning or come talk to a Chicago Business Center. Again, you're going to hear lots of plugs, but when it comes to zoning and what's permitted with zoning is one of those things that can get you tripped up real fast. And so have the conversation have that conversation early before you start getting yourself established. Do you need a Chicago business license to rent out a commercial space? If you are going to be doing any operations within the city of Chicago, and that includes out of a storefront space, you're going to need a Chicago business license. Again, you can make Sarah, if you're looking to enter into a commercial lease, you can make, and this is why having a small business, like an attorney, a contract attorney, or a commercial broker on your team is so important. You can write it into the initial contract that your lease is contingent upon receipt of your Chicago business license. And so then if you do not get your Chicago business license, you can void the contract or the lease agreement. So if you are intending on being in a commercial storefront, if you're intending on doing any sort of operations, the city requires you to have a Chicago business license, and it's imperative that you talk to a CBC, the small business center specialist down at BACP to understand what is the exact business license you need. I'm seeing some e-commerce online sales for Chicago versus those are incorporated in other states, and highly recommend that you reach out to UBC at Explore Uptown. Again, e-commerce and doing, we've had some businesses from out of state wanting to do work in the city of Chicago have this exact question. So highly recommend that you reach out to us and we can help direct you with a more targeted answer. Questions again about signing a lease until you have a license, and it's one of those chicken or egg type of situations, Phil. When you do any type of lease negotiation, you can always, again, have it written into your contract, and this is where a commercial broker is imperative, or a small business attorney, that you can make a lease contingent upon your business license. The nuances of the business information sheet, we can help you fill that out. and work through that process. But in order to have a business license, you have to put an address down. You are required to put an address down for your business license. So it's a tricky situation, and it's all about the timing. So it's one of those types of situations where it's best you kind of come talk to an advisor on the best approach for that. Can you get a City of Chicago business license if you use a shared space location? Well, Joseph, I think if you're going to do any type of business, yes, operations, and it includes in a shared space, I would think, yes, you need to have a business license. That shared space in and of itself is a licensed entity within the City of Chicago. But you as a business owner, even though you may be renting space in a shared space, you as a business entity are going to need to have some sort of Chicago business license. Talk to your closest DBC on what that potential business license is. But if you're in a shared space, it's a legally licensed shared space. They have their own particular license. And yes, you as a business, you should have a business license. It's to protect you. All of this is to protect you because BACP does have inspectors. They do at random, I think, or if there's a complaint, send out inspectors, and there could be citations and or fines associated with not being properly licensed. You name it, it's kind of out there. So this is all to protect you. It seems daunting, but that's why you have your team around you who can help you along the way. Question, Monique, about home-based business status affecting other family members who receive benefits. I don't believe so, Monique. Come talk to us on that. I don't believe the question that you're asking, that your grandma will be considered an employee. It's all about who you identify as employee. But again, this is more of a nuanced conversation. It's best to come talk to someone at a Chicago Business Center for more strategic guidance. Question, how long has the Chicago Business Information Form been in effect? I think it's the last, for as long as I can remember. There's different iterations of it. But the version that you see is the most recent form as of the end of last year. So that is the form that you should be filling out, whether you're getting prepared to do it online or downtown. Oh, thank you, Eric, for dropping into the chat the link to Chicago Business Centers. You can find it all there. Jacqueline, street vendors, the licensing process for that, as well as outdoor flea markets vendors. Highly, highly, highly recommend, Jacqueline, you come talk to someone at a Chicago Business Center or a small business center to get the exact licensing, because those types of vendors have different type of regulations, may have different type of regulations in addition to licensing that they have to go through if they're going to be there on a regular basis. So strongly recommend you come talk to someone. Let's see. Thank you, Kylie. You dropped your info. Any tips on how to open a coffee shop? Jennifer, yes, we actually had just in the last couple of weeks a business from a neighborhood to the south looking to open a second location. It all kind of comes down to your location, where you're looking to be. Is it equipped? What are you trying to do out of your coffee shop? Are you looking to have a kitchen to prepare foods? Are you going to have pre-prepared foods that you might just be microwaving? And then your standard coffee bar with espresso machines, etc. All that's really important. It kind of comes down to your business plan, because that will dictate what type of space you should go into. If you want to have a kitchen, that's a whole different level of commercial space needs than it is if you're just going to do prepackaged foods that you may just be warming up, or, for example, bakery items that you're going to be partnering with a neighborhood business and having delivered in. So recommend you come schedule a consultation with either UBC or any of your CBCs to talk about it, because it really just depends on the extent of the services that you want to offer with a coffee shop. Doris wants to know about getting a concession stand license. That one is a license that I'm not as familiar with. So recommend, Doris, that you reach out to a CBC to get more specific information. We've admittedly not had many, if any, questions about a concession stand license. So can't provide you very specific guidance other than come talk to a CBC. Let's see, question about concert promoter using venues. Do you need a license? We hire musicians to perform in venues that are not ours, just promoting agency. Julian, any type of business needs a license. So talk to a CBC or small business advisor on the specific type of license that you would likely need. If you're doing any type of business in the city, it is strongly recommended that you get a license. If you're a home-based business and you're making connections for folks, like doing scheduling for folks, you're the promoter and you work from home, and so you're connecting the musicians to the venues, you're still providing a service, you're still collecting some type of revenue. You need to make sure you're protected by having a business license. Come talk to a business advisor to help you figure out what exactly it is that you are going to need for your particular license. Great. Eric, me and my wife are interested in opening a pizza place on the first floor of a 3 flat. Not sure if we should sell as a street vendor or get a full blown pizza place. Well, Eric, this is where you need to sort of do your research and get a sense of what are your competitors around where you're at. What are the financial implications versus being a street vendor versus a full-fledged store? Because there are financial implications for both of those things, pros and cons. So this is where it comes down to writing out what your business plan model could be and doing the financial planning associated with it. Sometimes it's better to scale up to a commercial space by starting out as like a pop-up vendor at a food at farmers markets and using shared kitchen space and making your way up to a commercial space versus jumping right in. Sometimes it is better to jump right in, but you need to make sure you understand what your business model is, what the financial implications are associated with both of those ideas that you have. And also think about where the demand is and how you can build a brand following, because the success of your business is all about going to be referrals and getting a following and making sure that there's enough demand for your particular good or service. So strongly suggest that you start writing down in the business plan template some ideas, do some research, and do the financial analysis to see whether or not one approach works better on paper that you're ready to commit to versus another. SCORE can help you with that. A Chicago Business Center should be able to help you with that. That's where I suggest you start. Do we know anyone that can assist you with their 501c3? Lois, yes. Uptown United is a 501c3, so well-versed in operating a nonprofit organization. But when it comes to the establishment of a nonprofit, we can help you there as well. Many CBCs do have that experience as well. Getting a 501c3 up and running is a whole other system of paperwork that needs to happen. So Lois, recommend you just reach out either to myself. Let's see, I believe on the next slide, I have my email address. I'm at sarah@exploreuptown.org, or you can reach out to Kylie at ubc@exploreuptown.org, and we can help you with any type of 501c3 questions. I see some more questions in the Q&A. Let me move over. BACP, how am I doing on time? I want to make sure I can get questions answered. BACP, if you could answer the question about copies of the presentation, that would be helpful. Question about a virtual address. How would a virtual address affect zoning? That's a new question. I've not actually had that question before. So anonymous, recommend you reach out to ubc@exploreuptown.org so we can get that figured out, because that's a new one. and business templates that I can recommend. Highly recommend, Linda, that you go to Score, SCORE, and they have free business plan templates that work for the size of the business that you're looking for. And I think they might even break it down into industry type. Don't quote me on that one, but highly recommend you start exploring Score for that particular business plan template support.
We don't give out copies of today's presentation, but it will be available on youtube.com/Chicago BACP.
Great. We will have any of the forms that you have seen in this presentation. We have them here at our office. We are located at 4619 North Broadway in the Uptown neighborhood at the Wilson Red Line stop. And so we have all these forms. So if you don't have access to a printer, you're welcome to stop by our office. If you go to any of the CBCs, they should be able to print those for you, or if they don't already have them readily available, we will have those materials. We can get you those materials. So please feel free to reach out, to stop by. Our office hours are generally 9 to 5, although we are also a chamber of commerce. So when a business calls us, sometimes we have to just run and go support, triage our business, because that's what we do. So I highly recommend that if you have a very specific question that you need asked, whether it's around business planning support, licensing support, sign permits, that's a whole other realm, that when you're ready to get into a commercial space, sign permits, highly recommend you reach out to myself or to Kylie in advance and get something on the calendar to ensure that we are there and that we could provide you with the adequate time that you deserve to make sure that we're going through whatever little nuance of details we need to cover. So recommend that you schedule an appointment in advance. Or if you're not on the north side, reach out to one of the other CBCs identified here, or it was put in the webinar chat, the link to the other Uptown or to the other Chicago business centers. Reach out to them. Some of them also have Calendly. You can contact them, schedule an appointment. If the Uptown location is not suitable for you, you will find someone who is. In worst case scenario, email us and we will just connect you. See any other questions? Question about home-based business, which type of business license? Teresa, recommend you schedule an appointment with a CBC. You can contact us here at UBC at exploreuptown.org to schedule, because there is nuance when it comes to home-based businesses. There has been a huge influx since the start of the pandemic in home-based businesses, and BACP has responded with different types of business license requirements. So strongly suggest you schedule an appointment with a Chicago Business Center to figure out the exact business license that you need for your particular home-based business. Anyone else? Happy to continue answering questions. We are here for you. Again, all of our services are free, no strings attached. I know that's hard to believe, but it is true. And there is no right or wrong question. We are here to make your time in entrepreneurship as smooth as possible. So please do not hesitate to reach out to either myself, to Kylie, to any one of these Chicago business centers that you see on the screen here. If you're close to downtown and you're ready to go to BACP. They're a small business center. Sometimes that's the best way to go, particularly when it comes to a license. If you have all of your paperwork ready to go, it could be faster to just commit the time to go downtown, and they will literally review every single piece of paper that is required for your processing, and it will go significantly faster sometimes than online, depending on what your business is. So do not hesitate to reach out to us so that we can help you be as prepared and help you move things in a timely address. Question, address where you can pick up an application. Lois, we're located at 4619 North Broadway. 501c3s are a bit nuanced. So there's not a specific one application. There's going to be establishment requirements that you're going to have to file as a nonprofit in the state of Illinois. So for example, you're going to have articles of incorporation, which lay out what your goals are for the organization, the terms of your board structure, who are your staff, things of that nature. It could be a bit of a tedious task. So as you think about a 501c3, you're welcome to stop by our office and we can direct you and print out all the things that are needed for getting yourself established as a 501c3. This is also where a small business attorney is really important. That I know of several, for example, Friends of School organizations that are 501c3 nonprofit organizations that rely upon law firms to help them with the articles of incorporation, because there's some very specific legalese that have to go into that. So recommend you reach out. Airbnb, short-time rentals. Will someone need to go downtown? Ooh, Airbnbs and short-time rentals. Jacqueline recommends you reach out to ubc.at exploreuptown.org or go ahead and set up an appointment with Kylie. We've been getting more and more questions about this. Kylie is way more equipped to talk about this than I am or anyone at another CBC. If Uptown location is not conducive to you, just recommend you come talk to someone because there are regulations in place associated with short-term rentals and what that means as you as an owner-operator. Well, thank you, Monique. I enjoy this kind of work and we're here to help you guys as best we can. It's our job. It's what gives us joy, and thrilled that BACP has invited us to give this presentation again today. And I can hang on for a little bit if more people have questions. I don't see anything else in the Q&A. So can we put the, yes. Let me type in the chat. You can talk to Kylie at ubc@exploreuptown.org. I'm going to put it in the chat right now, although I think it's up earlier in the chat. For any Airbnb questions, you can reach out to us. Kylie has also dropped into the chat SCORE. SCORE again is a fantastic small business resource for business templates, financial planning templates, budget templates, all of the things that are free. And they also provide one-on-one mentorship opportunities as well. So as you start building yourself and your business out, and you're going to need more assistance beyond the business template, and maybe you're in a very specialized industry, SCORE can help connect you with a mentor who may be within your field that you're looking to venture into. And it's an invaluable resource. And there's others like Sunshine Enterprises. There are countless organizations that do this type of fantastic work. And again, your Chicago Business Center could have a list of those local businesses or providers that provide the same type of support that SCORE does. So strongly recommend that you reach out to any of your local Chicago business centers. Well, with that, BACP, I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A or in the chat. I thank you all for joining us. BACP, did you want to wrap it up?
Thank you so much, Sarah, for today's presentation. I hope all of our attendees got the information that they were looking for today. If you are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, please send an email to BACPoutreach@cityofchicago to receive credit for today's webinar. To learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. And thank you again, Sarah.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And happy Mother's Day to anyone
Happy Mother's Day.
who serves in a motherly capacity. Happy Mother's Day.